Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Everyday Equity, Everyday Ways to to make change. I am your host, Pooja Kothari, founder of Boundless Awareness, and our guest today is the amazing Arianna Dela Rosa. She's our special guest. Arianna is a holistic career and empowerment coach for first generation and BIPOC professionals. I have followed Arianna for so long on LinkedIn. I was so happy when she said yes to being my guest today. So, Arianna, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. And I'd love for you to introduce yourself to our audience.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Pooja, for having me here. This is my very first LinkedIn Live, so this will forever stay in my memories. And thank you for the wonderful introduction. Again, my name is Arianna. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a holistic career and empowerment coach for first generation and BIPOC professionals. And my community is so important to me. And a word that's also very important in my title is holistic,
Mhm.
because our community cannot thrive and navigate our careers if we don't take into account our upbringing, our identities, our intersectionality. I feel like if you are navigating your career without those things, you're almost doing it blindly. Instead of being rooted in empowerment, rooted in who you are. I am a firm believer that you can do what you love and you can advocate for yourself and you can make money. I think it's super radical and revolutionary for me to believe that our community can have it all. So
Mm.
I've been coaching for 4 years. I've worked with over 150 plus clients now. Again, all of them being first gen and BIPOC. And it's just so beautiful to see them get aligned jobs, promotions, leadership opportunities, and even start their own businesses, all through the lens of being empowered by who they are and what their identity is. So I'm excited to be here and share more.
Yeah. Yeah, I love what you say. If we don't bring in our identities and our intersections and our
Mhm.
upbringing and these lived experiences, then that's not what holistic is. So can I ask
Mhm.
you, what can you unpack that a little bit? Why is it important to bring our whole selves in? um, and what
Hmm.
about people who feel a little hesitant to, or maybe intimidated to bring their whole self in because they're scared that people really won't get it or they might not be accepted?
Yeah. Yes. So being your whole authentic self in the workplace is, of course, easier said than done. I want to acknowledge that we have been conditioned in this system to act and show up in a certain way. Also, too, like our families, our communities, and even our ancestors had to show up in certain ways just so they could survive.
Mm.
So, just even showing up as yourself, like whatever that means to you, like I am affirming that it is hard, and I want to validate that it is worth it because um, I like to think of it as like, what is the price you want to pay? Do you want to pay the price of being yourself? And yes, it's going to be hard, but you're going to be fulfilled, and you're gonna figure things out on your own accord. And that to me is true fulfillment. Or do you want to pay the price of working your career to be someone you're not?
Mhm.
And usually, when I pose that question, then of course it makes sense that, yeah, we want to navigate and thrive in our careers as ourselves. Um, and I think our families don't know what opportunities are out there and how abundant opportunities are. I feel like when we navigate our careers, we're thinking about what our parents says, what our culture says, what our community says. But it's been so cool to be a career coach and see my clients do what they love and make money. Like you can make money and have a living doing art, doing diversity and inclusion work, um, working for youth. Like you can make money and do all of that. So I've seen that with my clients and also firsthand as myself. For me, my career is entrepreneurship, is being the coach and founder of Empower First Coaching. So that's an example of what I mean by like showing up and thriving as your authentic self.
Mm-hmm. And I think I know the answer to this, but for our audience members who are just meeting you, why is it important to you to focus on the first gen BIPOC population?
Yes. So prior to being a coach, like I've worked in human resources, talent acquisition. So I have seen firsthand, like
Yep.
being behind the scene and seeing what it means to really develop employees and also recruit employees. And I just see a lot of my community not having the knowledge or even the social capital to get into roles and to be leaders. Um, I remember in former jobs, like I would have first gen and BIPOC employees like come to me and vent to me because they see me as someone who's like them. And I feel privileged to have worked in positions of power where I understand what it means to develop employees. But for folks who don't know how to develop themselves or how to show up, we are following an agenda made by systems of oppression to keep us small. Keeping us small means not being leaders. And again, not being in roles that we want to do where we can make the most impact. And instead feeling pressured to be a role that we're not.
Mm.
Yes.
I have like so many follow-up questions, but I'm gonna wait because and I'll circle back to it. I was just writing some notes. But I want to ask you, you mentioned you had a prior careers. What brought you to one, the really, I find it the really terrifying jump of starting your own business after
Mhm.
leaving kind of like an institutionalized setting, a place where you always had a salary. And when we choose to leave jobs like that, it is petrifying. And a lot of us make that jump, and we are very brave. But I want to know a little bit behind your story. What made you make that jump? How did
Yeah.
you handle that? How scary it was, and
Yes.
why this?
Yes. Before I answer this question, I feel called to share something that one of my coach friends, her name is Michelle Sejas. Shout out if you're watching. She brought this up to me, and it kind of like blew my mind and made me feel more grounded. And she mentioned how when BIPOC or first gen or even just like children of immigrants start businesses, uh, it could be like unconsciously rooted in a trauma response. Um, in a way of like we have experienced trauma, so now our response to that is to create something better.
Mm,
um, so I found that really interesting, and I felt a little
hmm,
bit attacked, but it's true. And because I see that as true for me, I'm able to ground myself and always remind myself, like, what is the bigger picture here? What is my bigger mission? Because I understand that I have experienced trauma to lead me to this point, but I don't want to be rooted in that. I want to be rooted in liberation. I want to be rooted in love. And that is related to what started me becoming a coach. It was really from a gift of love. And I didn't even know I wanted to be a coach until
hmm,
it came to my lap. Like, I literally became a coach the first year I heard what a coach was. Um, so, to give some context, I am born and raised in Los Angeles, specifically in historic Filipino town. And if you don't know, it is the largest Filipino community here in the United States. And I feel privileged to have grown up in an area that was with my culture, that was around people
mhm.
of color, that were also first gen low income. And it even got to a point where I thought that being first gen low income was the norm. Until I went outside of that bubble. But I was always surrounded by my community. So I was involved in advocacy for Filipino communities, also specifically advocating for educational equity in my community,
Yeah.
raising awareness about mental health. So my love for my community then led to understanding like how other marginalized communities experience similar issues. And then I broadened my scope. I learned more about what it means to serve first generation BIPOC and children of immigrants in general, and seeing a lot of the overlap that it had to me as my identity of being Filipino. And because of that, I've always been a community organizer. I've always been an educator. I've always been someone who is thinking about how to make the world a better and more just place. Um, and then along the way, so during the pandemic of 2020, I saw that a lot of my community were either getting laid off, or were not finding jobs, or were just experiencing anxiety, depression just from the pandemic in general. And I saw that I could fulfill a need here. And I genuinely just wanted to help community. So I put a post out there on LinkedIn, and I just said, hey, if anyone needs help, whether it's like job stuff, career stuff, or life stuff, sign up to talk with me. Like, I just want to help you. Like, let's build that human connection. And I only expected like 3 or 5 people at most to sign up. Little did I know 60 people would sign up for this call. And I was like, holy shit, that's so many people. And I had a 9 to 5 job at the time. So I was like, how am I going to do all of that? But I committed to meeting each and every one of them in the span of like 2.5 months. So I met with each and every one of them. I got testimonials from them because I just wanted to hear how I was doing. Like, oh, what did you think about my service? And little did I know they became testimonials. And I just loved doing that. I just loved talking to people and helping them in a way that felt like real and authentic to me. I didn't have a professional front. Like I didn't show up as like Arianna, the HR person. I showed up as like Arianna, me, and it felt so good. And it was cool to see that people were also getting results from me just helping them one time. So I was doing some research. I was like, what is this? What is this feeling? What is this like thing that I'm doing? It wasn't consulting. Um, it wasn't necessarily being an educator, although I also define myself as an educator. And then I came across like life coach, career coach, and that felt really aligned with me. So after knowing what that was, I just dived in. I was like, this felt so aligned, and I had such good momentum that I didn't want to let it go. So I connected with other coaches. I learned more about what the coaching community is, and then the rest is history. And now I'm here.
I hope if there's anybody listening who is considering, branching out into their own and sharing, the wealth of education and resources that they have.
Mhm.
Listen, everybody wants something. You don't be afraid of putting yourself out there. I mean, look how many people needed you. And the fact that you made time for all of them, and it really was like the jumpstart for Empower First, which you never know until you try. And the answer will always be no if you don't try. So you might as well try and then get the no if it ever comes, because it might never ever come.
Yes. And this is an example of why I like just show up as who you are, because you're going to get opportunities you've probably never heard of. Like I mentioned, I became a coach the first year I learned what a coach was. It wasn't like in high school, I was like, I want to be a coach. I had a lot of different career ideas in mind, but the moment I honed into serving as who I am, that is when the career came to me. And I just had to say yes to it. And that's the price I was willing to pay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have been like a notorious job hopper. Which, by the way, if you are one, like that's totally okay. And that is normal. And I think people should have the ability and privilege to try different jobs. So no shame on you. If anything, like I applaud you for figuring out what is for you. So I am a job hopper, and I've always been on this journey of finding out what is for me. And then the moment I stopped looking and just like showed up as myself, like it came to me.
Yeah. It sounds like largely a groundwork that has helped you here was your community organizing. So I want to ask you about working with your community. I mean, from a much younger age, which I feel like was the foundations of what you're doing now, is because you were so in touch with your community. So a lot of people don't know what organizing and being in community is. Some people do and have the wealth of that in their background, and some people don't. So can you start from a more like foundational level of what do you mean about being in community?
What do I mean by being in community? It's about being with people who you see yourself in as well, and being part of something bigger than you. And I know that's such a broad statement as well. It can look like several things. I feel like being in community can be fun. It can be as fun as like having these big grand parties and you're just celebrating one person. I know in Filipino communities, when we party hard, like the whole neighborhood gets involved. And that's similar to a lot of other like families of color. Like we just know how to have a gathering. So even something like that we are just born into, like I see that as like being part of community. Being part of community can also be something as small as having close friends who are also struggling with showing up, who are also struggling with school, knowing what they want to be when they grow up. Or it can be as active as joining a nonprofit that wants to have more equitable solutions for your community. I did organizing for fun. Like when I was young, I just thought that was fun. It's just so fun to be with people and doing something and helping for a cause that's bigger than you. And I've always been specifically part of educational equity spaces. So I've always volunteered and organized as a mentor, or organized creating conferences, creating educational spaces where people can learn about their culture or just learn about issues going on in the world overall. So yes, that is what being in community means and the different ways it can look like. So we have all been parts of community. I think it's about like seeing that it is community. And sorry, go ahead.
No, I just want to say I love this because it's a little hard to explain, but the way you explained it is, there's got to be something intrinsically in common with the group that you're in. They share some identity of yours that you are very invested in. Like it's not just an identity that you have but you don't really care about. It's like an identity that's really important to you, and everybody shares that.
Yes.
But I really like how you described that. And I thought that was perfect. Okay, so from your organizing days when you were younger, like what did you learn in that time that's helping you today?
I have a deep level of empathy and then also humility. Empathy because like I had to see the issues we were advocating for. For example, although Filipinos are either the second or third largest Asian community in the US, not many of us graduate college. A lot of us stop at high school, and then we don't have many opportunities from there. So just seeing that disparity, and as someone who has the privilege of going to college, which also when I graduated college, I was part of the 2 to 3% of Filipinos who graduated from that college. So very small community. And I was just so curious of like, why is this? Like, I wanted to dive into the why. And when I dove into the why, I understood colonization. Like everything was rooted in colonization, the colonization of my people for 500 plus years from Spain, Japan, the US, and that totally changed like what it meant to even be Filipino. So I see colonization. I also see systems of oppression. I see discrimination against immigrants as well. And I feel like a lot of that has impacted the way that Filipinos show up here. So once I dove into the why, I felt so sad to my community, for my community, even though I've never experienced it myself. But I had like
Yeah.
a deep sadness in me because I knew that this was still going on for other folks. Because I've seen it in my friends as well, who may not be as privileged as me with the opportunities that I have. So I've learned like a deep empathy to learn more about the why. And I never speak over someone's experiences. I'm the type of person that like I will hear you talk for 1 hour because everything that you say is important. And I'm so certain that no one has allowed you to speak for 1 hour straight. So I've developed such a deep empathy to understand what it means to be first gen children of immigrants, BIPOC. And then also that comes with humility too, which is important in this work because humility is what's going to help you grow. It's what's going to help you change to be a better leader and to show up. So because I organize at such a young age, like I'm going to make mistakes. Like I'm probably going to ruffle some feathers or even say something that's problematic, which I have done many times. But because I was very serious about making a change. Like I did not want to get my ego in the way. So during those moments where I did something wrong or where I may have caused harm, like I would step back and I would learn from it. So overall, I learned empathy and also humility. And I feel like those two themes combined, it is also the lens of how I coach and who I am today.
Yeah, that comes across pretty clearly, actually, in the way you describe things, and even your description of all of this, of your community, really shows, I think, how you think about it and the empathy and humility you bring in. It seems kind of inescapable. So when we talk about, we're here, our title of our LinkedIn Live series is Everyday Equity. I'm wondering about equity in your work, and specifically, when you find yourself in a situation where you're like, oops,
Yeah.
how do you address it? How do you learn from it? And when you are coaching somebody and you see the other person exhibiting stereotypes or bias or some sort of discriminatory thoughts, beliefs, attitudes, how do you address on both sides, yourself and your clients?
Yes. So this very much aligns with the humility piece. I want to normalize that we all have bias. What I don't want to normalize is the harm that bias causes. So I think when we're able to separate that, like normalize, yeah, we have bias, but also not normalize the harm that it causes, then we can say, okay, it stops when we understand like, oh, that we have bias and that we can dive deeper into it so we don't cause harm. So again, bias is normal. That's just how we are conditioned, and it's about what we do with that bias that's important. And bias definitely shows up in my work. I am not perfect. And when I notice that like an oopsie moment or a bias moment comes up, I take a moment to first like feel my feelings. I'm probably going to feel shame. I'm going to feel cringe. I'm going to feel upset at myself. I'm going to let that happen. I'm going to let that flow. I will probably journal about it. And as I'm journaling, I'm probably going to write about like why that felt wrong. And the fact that you acknowledge it and you feel something from it, that's a great first step. That is a great first step towards humility and towards change. That's great that you feel bad about it. Like, let's sit with it. And let's just let it flow. Your body wants to do its thing. And also as someone who is a recovering perfectionist, like, oh, I felt so bad when I felt like, oh my God, I'm causing harm, or I did something that caused harm. I'm going to quit. Like, this isn't for me. Don't quit. It's okay. Like feel your feelings. And after I feel my feelings and I feel like I'm at a place where I am more grounded or more neutral, I want to learn more about this bias. And learning about this bias, for me, like I lean into other community members who know more about the bias than I do. So I love that I have a community of folks who are also driven by justice work, because I know who to reach out to talk about a certain topic if I need to. So I lean into my community. I be vulnerable. I ask them questions. I tell them the situation, and I ask them, how would you have liked to have me show up instead? Like, what is your feedback?
Mm.
And it becomes a process of collaboration instead of shame or nitpicking things. Like, it's really like we're in this together, so let's collaborate on how, we can show up for our communities. And then also too, like, after you learn, you may slip up again, and when that happens, like, continue to practice forgiveness, um and learn, like, oh, why did that happen again? Like, come from curiosity, like, why did that happen again? Is there something that I'm missing? Do I need to learn more about something? Is that the reason why it slipped up? So come from curiosity and continuously learn from your community, and forgive yourself. Because I don't want to let my shame stop me from this work. I want my feelings of shame to be a catalyst of change so that I can be better at this work.
Arianna, I'm writing down like 18 of your quotes, um, which we'll post for everybody. But I mean,
Amazing.
you're like on a roll. And yeah, I was going to say,
I'm glad I'm on a roll, because over here it's early, so I'm running with it.
yes, I know West Coast time. Guilt is a useless feeling. My therapist always says that. Guilt is a useless feeling. But if you use it as a catalyst for change, then it becomes useful. So just sitting in that self-pity or that guilt, or, is not helping anybody. Certainly not ourselves, and it's not helping anybody that we may have harmed. Well, I think that kind of flows right into one of our last questions, which is, and I feel like this is a great piece of advice already, shame to be a catalyst for change. Any other advice you have for our audience to integrate DEI into their daily practice?
Yes, I love this question, and this is related to what got me started in DEI work. Learn about your community first. I feel like once you understand the injustices, the inequities, and the history of your own culture, of your own identities, we have many identities, like, hence intersectionality. So learn about your intersectionality and your identities first. Because then it'll be easier to see the parallels in other marginalized identities. You will grow that empathy and that humility to collaborate and to organize with other folks too. And I would not have broadened or widened, like, my scope of support if it didn't start with me understanding what it meant to be Filipino. Because then I see how Filipinos are also related to the liberation of Palestine. I also see how Filipinos are related to other immigrants who come here, who are war refugees. So I see the parallels in a lot of other marginalized identities because I am rooted in mine first.
Oh my God.
And it just becomes so much more motivating, because it's like, yeah, it's my community, but it's also everyone else. So I personally feel like it's very motivating when you understand why DEI is personal for you.
So good. So good. And I love how you use the word parallels, because nothing is the same.
Yes.
But we do have, yes, paralleled experience. They may not even be similar experiences, but you can see the parallel. And I love how you said that. I'm going to go back and watch this and then and take that sound bite out so everyone can really benefit from this. Thank you. Okay. Where can we find you? How can people get in touch with you?
Yes. So first things first, like, I love using LinkedIn. That's how y'all are watching me right now. Find me at Arianna Dela Rosa. Type my name, you'll find me. I'm also very active on Instagram. It's at Empower First. And you can learn more about my services at empowerfirstcoaching.com. I offer one-on-one coaching, group coaching, and corporate workshops. And I just want to do a plug-in advocate for myself. It is almost Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. I know it's a little over a month away, but if folks are looking for facilitators, space holders, workshop hosts to go to your company and to talk about APAM, then I would love that. I love talking about what it means to be Filipino, thus what it means to be Asian American, and I would love to help your organization in that way.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Arianna, thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
I've taken so much out of this. I know our audience has too. Well, folks, we will see you next time. I think it's April 4th with our next guest. And thank you for joining again. Everyday Equity, Everyday Ways to Make a Change. Bye.
So much. Bye.